Do the Democrats agree with you in the Washington Post article that we ought not to be funding with American dollars Chinese aircraft carriers?
Some do. I mean, I think everyone can agree upon at least that aspect of it, that American dollars should not be funding the Chinese Communist Party's military buildup. And make no mistake, they're embarked on the largest sustained peacetime military buildup since World War II, potentially ever, depending on how you defined it. And we shouldn't be investing our money in Chinese aircraft carriers, fighter jets, artillery shells, advanced nuclear technology. But that's what's happening. We launched a bipartisan investigation into BlackRock and MSCI. My ranking member, Raja Krishnamurthy, has expressed a ton of concern about American dollars funding Chinese military buildup. And in many cases, this money is going to companies that have already been flagged on various government blacklists for posing national security risks. So what's crazy, Hugh, is that it's not illegal, but it's suicidal. We're subsidizing our own destruction. We're allowing pension funds, university endowments to invest in Chinese companies that are building things designed to kill Americans in a future conflict. So no matter where you draw the line for decoupling, let's say you just want transparency measures, as some Republicans do, you want sort of a broader set of restrictions on American money going to China, as I do. I think what's inarguable is that money shouldn't be funding military companies and technology companies like AI companies in China that are perfecting their genocidal surveillance state.
Now, the Financial Times also ran a story this morning that Goldman Sachs has been taking Chinese money, laundering it in effect. It's not criminal, but they're hiding the origin of the money, and they're buying U.S. companies. It's the opposite of what BlackRock is doing, which is sending American money to Chinese company. They're taking Chinese money and putting it into American companies. Do you want to stop that flow as well?
Well, particularly if these are national security related companies, I saw that some of the investments were in the cyber space and in the supply chain space. I mean, it all depends on what type of control comes with the investment, but potentially that could give them access to information or effective control over companies that would be bad for American national security. So I think it's definitely worth looking into. But the bottom line is, Congress, we need to step up and legislate a fix to some of this stuff, whether it's on outbound capital flows, which the Biden administration just released an executive order that's filled with loopholes. I mean, it's a step in the right direction, but it doesn't go far enough. We need to legislate that. When it comes to Chinese money being invested in American companies, we tried to fix CFIUS to get at some of that issue, but clearly it's not up to the task. So we need a legislative fix to that. You know, here's the other thing, Hugh, that I find interesting when it comes to American investments in China. In addition to being morally reprehensible, the Chinese funds have been terrible investments. So over the last 5 years, the S&P 500 has soared to about 78%. But meanwhile, things like BlackRock's FXI ETF, which invests in these Chinese large cap companies, it's down 30% in that same period, even as Chinese GDP supposedly doubled. So it doesn't make sense. And a lot of the funds we looked at in our investigation similarly underperformed drastically. So where did the money go? Is it going into corrupt Communist Party coffers? I don't know. My only point is that beyond the national security concerns, just as an investment proposition, China looks bad, and there are systemic risks to a continued investment in China that range from having your assets seized in the event they try and take over Taiwan, or just the inherent risk involved in things like variable interest entities for which there are no shareholder protections. So part of what we're trying to do on the committee in a bipartisan fashion is to engage Wall Street in a dialogue about this, because it just seems insane to me that we would continue to send our money to China where it's being used for nefarious purposes.
Well, Chairman, the investment bankers make their bonuses based upon the amount of money they move through. So they have every Adam Smith-driven incentive to just blow you off. Does your panel have subpoena power, by the way?
We do. We do have
I
subpoena
would I
power.
would grab Larry Fink. I would grab Jamie Dimon, separate hearings, and I would put them down and say, let's talk about this because it's a national crisis. Let me ask you, by the way, I think if I had a bell, I would have rung it when you said Sisyphus. I believe that violates the acronym rule, does it not?
Ah, you got me, Hugh. Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. I apologize. Which we
No, no, don't.
revised.
Just send $10 to Food for the Poor because that's it. It's $10 tip jar for Food for the Poor when you use an
The
acronym.
fine is
Now I
increased.
want
We've
to talk to you
increased the
about.
fine unilaterally.
I did because you're a repeat offender. Like, you know that on the sentencing guidelines, people who do the same thing over and over again, they get fined more. Princeton people are particularly prone to this. And then when you pick up a PhD from Georgetown, you really become. And then you go to Marine. Did you ever go to the Command General Staff College or the War College or anything like that?
No, I got out as a captain before I had to do all that, before my brain was corrupted at the field grade
Well,
level.
they have many acronyms there. I'm listening to a bio of Eisenhower and I can't keep up. Let me ask you something, Chairman. Ro Khanna was on, and we were talking about artificial intelligence, and he said they're sitting down with the speaker about what to do. I have no preconceived opinions, but I do think they might want to just add the Select Committee on Engagement with the Chinese Communist Party, comma, and artificial intelligence regulation, because you got a smart group of people. It's working. Would you be opposed to that if the speaker and the minority leader wanted to expand the jurisdiction of the committee to look at what we do about AI?
Not at all. And we've actually, in our early investigations, had numerous conversations about AI, and I would expect those to be part of future policy reports we release. I would note Ro Khanna is my ranking member on the Innovation Subcommittee on Armed Services, and we see eye to eye on a lot of things related to military innovation going forward and have a very good working relationship. And he's willing, and I think him going on your show is a testament to this. One thing I really respect about Ro is he's willing to mix it up. Obviously, he's very progressive. We disagree on a lot of issues. I'm right, he's wrong, but I respect his intellect and his willingness to mix it up. Three quick ideas here on AI for small steps we can take in this Congress as we consider sort of the broader long-term implications. Well, related to what we were just talking about, American venture capitalists, American money in general, shouldn't be allowed to invest in Chinese AI companies like Baidu. Okay, it just makes absolutely no sense. Again, we're subsidizing our own destruction. Two, when it comes to autonomous vehicle technology, which is going to be one of the most widespread deployments of AI in a way that really affects the American people over the next 10 years, right now, of the 10-ish companies that are allowed to test in America, at least three, I believe, are Chinese, but our companies are not allowed to test in China or expand really at all in China. And that, as a matter of reciprocity, that's wrong. We shouldn't allow Chinese AV companies here in America. And then finally, the ethical guidelines that the Pentagon has for the use of AI are a decent start. They're pretty good. I actually think we could build off those, expand those across the federal government with the goal of not suppressing innovation on AI or slowing down our efforts in this area, but also ensuring there are guardrails so that we don't have uncontrolled AI that does things that Americans are concerned about. And then you start to build out the concentric circle so we're on the same page with our allies. Start with our closest allies, the Brits and the Aussies, and then expand from there. And particularly focus on countries that have a unique technological capability in AI. If we do that, if we get sort of the overall ethical framework right, I actually think we can turbocharge innovation in this space and make sure that we win the AI race and the CCP does not win the AI race.
Well, it is a national security issue, but I've got three suggestions for you and your colleagues. First of all, a stand down order to every regulatory agency out there, the FTC and everybody else. They have no idea what they're doing. They just don't. AI is new. It's not meant for old regulatory structures like the Interstate Commerce Commission trying to regulate airplanes. Doesn't work. Number two, you got to change the pay scale for technologists. Now, they used to have a special pay scale out at China Lake for the rocket scientists that we needed at China Lake and other advanced weaponry systems. We need a technologist pay scale that is just way better than we've got. And we're going to lose every technologist that DARPA has. And then number three, and this is what I want to ask you about, we need visibility. I mean, walk-in rights to every room in Silicon Valley and every AI company in the United States. By walk-in rights, I mean, if a guy from DARPA shows up and they knock on the door at Meta and he says, show me to your AI lab, they don't get to lock the door. These are, it's like nuclear science. We can't let this stuff be developed in private. Do you agree with me?
I agree with that. I guess the flip side of that, though, Hugh, is enough research security such that, you know, an MSS operative, a Ministry of State Security, think KGB in China, couldn't just walk in to the same facility, or a United Front operative. And honestly, your reference to China Lake, I think, is a great instructive example here, because when it comes to the things we put in our weapon systems, we have a very old suite of things called energetics, which make our weapons go and go boom. We developed more advanced energetics at China Lake. It's called CL-20. It stands for China Lake 20. The Chinese stole that technology, and that's what they put in their weapon systems. And that's why their rockets go farther than us and have greater destructive impact. So that's a lesson in how not to do things. And we remain too risk averse to use things like CL-20, even though it's now old technology. It was developed in the 80s. So a lot of examples that we can use from there in order to apply it to the AI competition today.
Now I'm going to geek out. The Office of Personnel Management, aka OPM, so I don't get fined. OPM had a separate schedule for scientists at China Lake that was policed by the deputy director I replaced as the deputy director at OPM. He was a scientist who had worked there, and he said, no one's going to work for us unless we pay them. It was like double the highest number. Roe said yesterday, we got to pay them like we pay our doctors. No. We're not going to. This is the most lucrative field in the world. You got to give them a piece of the intellectual property. I mean, you really have to come to grips with the fact that technologists make the dollars. And I don't know that the American people really understand the difference between what the private sector pays a level 1 technologist and what the government will. We're going to lose everybody.
Yeah. Well, you said you're reading an Eisenhower biography. There's also instructive examples from the post-Sputnik push on science and recruiting talent that Eisenhower made in 1957, 1958. By the way, what Eisenhower book are you reading, Hugh?
Gene Smith, and
Eisenhower
it's
War and
wonderful.
Peace.
Yes.
It's a great book.
I didn't know anything about Fox Connor, General Fox Connor, or his 3 rules for war. Do you know his 3 rules for war? Do the Marines teach this sort of stuff, or is it?
I don't remember the 3.
Okay, I want to tell you what he said. He said, number 1, never fight unless you have to. Number 2, never fight alone. And number 3, never fight for long. These are for rules with a democracy. What do you think of that?
I like that. He was a wise man, Ike's mentor, and a lot to learn from
George Marshall's mentor.
One of the forgotten heroes. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and a guy who won World War II at one remove. But I wouldn't expect a Marine to know that. I know he's an Army guy. Chairman Gallagher, thank you so much for your time and a great Washington Post op-ed. I'll be right back. America updates from Florida as we have them. 1-800-520-1234 if you're in Florida and you want to talk to me. 1-800-520-1234. Idalia is a beast.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. Go to myphdweightloss.com to learn more.